Manisha Bhiwani's dreams of a perfect wedding shattered just days before the ceremony. Raghav Dutt's polished image began to crack under secrets of crime and betrayal. Pooja Rathor's mask of friendship hid a chilling alliance. Arvind Bhiwani's sudden return stirred old grudges and suspicion, and Inspector Viren Kaul's relentless pursuit uncovered a web so dark that the entire town of Bhiwani would never forget the truth. On a humid evening in Bhiwani, Haryana, the town was alive with anticipation. The streets were crowded with vendors, marriage halls were decorated with colorful lights, and families were preparing for the wedding season. Among them, one name stood out more than any other: Manisha Bhiwani. At just 27, she was a respected school teacher, admired for her calm nature and dedication to her students. Her wedding to Raghav Dutt, a wealthy businessman from a prominent family, was scheduled to take place in just 5 days. For weeks, people had been speaking of the grand event. It was to be a union of two families who seemed destined for prosperity and status. Yet beneath the surface of celebration, a storm was silently brewing, one that no one could have predicted. Manisha's day began like any other. She taught her classes, walked through the corridors with her usual grace, and waved goodbye to her students in the late afternoon. She was seen leaving the school compound on her scooter, a familiar sight in town. For years, her routine had remained unchanged, and no one suspected that this evening would be different. As she drove past the narrow lanes and the fields surrounding the outskirts of town, a sense of unease seemed to follow her, though no one could explain why. Later, her scooter was discovered abandoned near a desolate roadside canal. The engine was switched off, the keys were still inside, and her bag was left hanging from the handle. There was no sign of struggle, no footprints in the dust, and no indication of where she had gone. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The discovery of the scooter sent shockwaves through the town. Families whispered in hushed tones, speculating whether she had been kidnapped, attacked, or had chosen to flee on her own. Parents tightened their hold on their daughters, reminding them of the dangers lurking in the shadows. For a town so deeply rooted in tradition and community, the idea that someone as well known as Manisha could disappear without a trace was terrifying. Her family, overwhelmed with grief and confusion, rushed to the police station to file a missing persons report. With the wedding just days away, the disappearance was more than a tragedy. It was a scandal that threatened to taint the entire family's honor. Inspector Viren Kaul, a seasoned officer with a reputation for solving difficult cases, was assigned to the matter. Known for his sharp instincts, he immediately sensed that the situation was far more complicated than it appeared. He examined the abandoned scooter carefully, noting its placement. It had not been toppled over or forced to stop suddenly. It seemed as though Manisha had willingly left it there, or had been made to do so under silent pressure. The nearby canal was searched extensively, but no signs of her were found. Rumors quickly spread across Bhiwani, adding fuel to an already tense atmosphere. Some said Manisha had run away to escape a forced marriage. Others suggested that she had been abducted by strangers on the highway. Still others believed this was connected to old family disputes that had remained unresolved for years. Each theory only deepened the mystery. As night fell, the town's festive spirit transformed into dread. Streets once filled with laughter and chatter now carried the weight of uncertainty. Meanwhile, Raghav Dutt remained calm in public, insisting that his bride-to-be would be found and that nothing could stand in the way of their marriage. His wealth and influence kept him in control of the narrative, but behind closed doors, questions about his involvement began to circulate. Why had he shown no panic, no real grief? Why did he avoid the police during the first hours of the investigation? His silence was unsettling, and his composure made people wonder whether he knew more than he was willing to admit. As the first night of Manisha's disappearance stretched into dawn, the case had already gripped the entire region. For Inspector Kaul, it was clear this was no ordinary missing persons report. The abandoned scooter was not just evidence of disappearance. It was a symbol of the secrets waiting to be uncovered. What had seemed like a straightforward wedding preparation had turned into the beginning of a nightmare that would shake Bhiwani to its core. Manisha was gone, and with her absence, The dark truth of her life was about to unravel piece by piece. Inspector Viren Kaul wasted no time after the first night of Manisha's disappearance. With years of experience handling complicated cases, he knew that time was crucial. The longer she remained missing, the more difficult it would become to find answers. He began his investigation with the people closest to her, starting with her fiancé, Raghav Dutt. At first glance, Raghav appeared calm, polished, and completely in control. He spoke to the media with confidence, assuring everyone that Manisha would soon return. He even promised a handsome reward for anyone who could provide information. Yet behind his practiced words and flawless public image, something felt artificial, almost rehearsed. Viren noticed that Raghav never once asked the police whether Manisha was safe, whether she was hurt, or whether she had been attacked. His concern seemed less about her and more about how the situation reflected on him. The inspector then turned his attention to Manisha's circle of friends. Among them was Pooja Rathore, her closest confidant, who had known her since childhood. Pooja arrived at the police station pale and visibly nervous. Her statements about Manisha's last days were vague, filled with hesitation. She admitted that Manisha had been unusually quiet and restless before her disappearance. According to Pooja, Manisha had confided that something about her upcoming marriage troubled her deeply. She had spoken of fears, though she never revealed what exactly frightened her. Viren noted how Pooja avoided direct eye contact and grew anxious whenever Raghav's name came up. Her behavior planted seeds of suspicion that perhaps she knew more than she was willing to share. As the inquiry spread, Inspector Kaul unearthed troubling details about Raghav's business life. Behind the glitter of his wealth, he was drowning in debts. Several small contractors accused him of fraud, but none had dared to take legal action, fearing his influence. His properties were mortgaged, and his so-called empire was crumbling quietly in the background. A grand wedding with Manisha, a respected teacher from a reputable family, seemed like the perfect shield to maintain his image and secure financial stability. Viren began to question whether this wedding was built on love at all, or whether it was an escape route for Raghav. If Manisha had discovered his fragile empire, had she tried to walk away, only to pay the price for it? Meanwhile, whispers spread across the community. Some neighbors claimed they had seen a black SUV near the school gate on the day of Manisha's disappearance, parked for hours as if waiting. Others swore they heard an argument in the street, though none could identify the voices. The more the police dug, the more it became clear that this was not a random abduction, but something planned with precision. Inspector Kaul grew convinced that Manisha's disappearance was tied not to chance, but to someone close to her. Back at her family home, emotions ran high. Her parents insisted she had never once expressed doubts about the wedding. They described her as a dutiful daughter who would never dishonor her family by running away. Yet hidden beneath their words was fear. The disgrace of a scandal was as terrifying to them as the thought of losing their daughter. To them, she was a victim, but in the eyes of the wider community, questions about her character had already begun to rise. This social pressure only complicated the case, making truth harder to extract. The inspector's instincts kept circling back to two people: Raghav, with his desperate need to maintain his empire, and Pooja, whose nervousness suggested concealed truths. Could it be possible that Pooja was protecting Manisha's secrets, or worse, covering for someone else? Each unanswered question added weight to the case, dragging it deeper into shadows. By the end of the second week, Viren was no closer to finding Manisha, but one thing was clear: her disappearance was no accident. It was the result of carefully hidden motives, tangled relationships, and dangerous secrets. The perfect wedding everyone had celebrated was now revealed as a fragile mask, and behind it lay betrayals waiting to be uncovered. For Inspector Kaul, this was no longer a case of a missing bride. It was the slow unwrapping of something far darker, something that threatened to shake the foundations of everyone connected to her. Just as Inspector Viren Kaul was starting to piece together the fragments of Manisha's life, another twist entered the story, one that shifted the direction of the investigation entirely. In the third week of her disappearance, a man appeared at the Bhiwani police station, introducing himself as Arvind Bhiwani, Manisha's cousin. His sudden arrival raised eyebrows, not only because he had been absent from the family's life for years, but also because of the time. The family, shocked by his reappearance, explained to Viren that Arvind had long been estranged after bitter disputes over property and inheritance. He had left Bhiwani abruptly and never looked back, not even during family celebrations or tragedy. For him to return now, right when Manisha's case had gripped the town, seemed far too coincidental. Arvind presented himself as a concerned relative who wanted to assist in the search. He claimed he had been living in Jaipur and had heard about the case through a distant acquaintance. He spoke with careful words, ensuring his tone sounded sympathetic. But Viren noticed inconsistencies in his account, hesitations, gaps in his timeline, and an unnatural eagerness to prove his innocence, even when no one had accused him yet. The inspector's instincts flared. He knew that people who pushed too hard to appear innocent often had reasons to fear the truth. Digging into Arvind's background revealed a troubled history. Years ago, he had engaged in a bitter feud with Manisha's father over ancestral. Court cases were filed, tempers rose, and eventually Arvind walked away, cutting ties with the entire family. Rumors suggested he had gotten involved in shady dealings while away, though nothing had ever been proven. What caught Viren's attention most, however, was that Arvind had been spotted in Bhiwani days before Manisha disappeared. A shopkeeper near the canal reported seeing him loitering, though at the time, no one thought much of it. The connection between his presence and the location where Manisha's scooter was found was too strong to dismiss. The more Viren pressed, the more tangled the case became. Was Arvind's return a coincidence, or was he somehow entangled in the disappearance? The possibility that he sought revenge against the family seemed plausible. If Manisha had been taken to hurt her father emotionally, it would explain the precision of her vanishing. Yet the theory had gaps. Why would Arvind resurface openly if he had something to hide? Why not remain in the shadows, unseen, if his motives were revenge? Viren's mind wrestled with these contradictions. The family, already burdened with grief, reacted with mixed emotions to Arvind's return. Some relatives accused him directly, calling him a curse who had brought misfortune upon them. Others believed his arrival was fate, that he had returned to mend old wounds. Manisha's father refused to speak to him, leaving the inspector to handle the matter without family interference. Still, the tension within the household grew heavier with each passing day. In parallel, whispers began to spread in town about Arvind's involvement. Locals recalled seeing him in conversations with strangers, men who were not from Bhiwani. Some even hinted at possible criminal ties. Yet nothing concrete surfaced, only speculation that fueled fear and suspicion. For Viren, separating rumor from fact became increasingly difficult. He knew that focusing too much on Arvind might distract from other suspects, especially Raghav and Pooja. Still, he could not ignore the unsettling coincidences surrounding the cousin's return. One evening, while reviewing evidence in his office, Viren stumbled across a detail that gave him pause. Phone tower records from the day of Manisha's disappearance placed Arvind's number near the canal at almost the exact time her scooter was abandoned. This revelation tightened the noose of suspicion. But as the inspector prepared to confront him with this finding, another question gnawed at his mind. If Arvind was involved, was he acting alone, or was he just a piece of a larger puzzle? The sudden re-entry of the cousin into the case transformed the investigation into a web of old resentments, financial greed, and hidden motives. Each revelation only made the picture more complex. Manisha's disappearance no longer seemed like a single act, driven by one person's desire. It began to look like a storm of multiple forces, colliding. For Inspector Kaul, Arvind's presence was both a clue and a distraction, one that could either lead him closer to the truth, or dangerously astray. The case, already shadowed by uncertainty, now stood at the edge of deeper secrets waiting to unfold. Inspector Viren Kaul's investigation had already touched dangerous ground, but nothing compared to the revelation that came when he turned his attention to Manisha's phone record. In the chaos of interviews, property disputes, and rumors. This detail had initially seemed routine, but now it opened a new path. Late-night calls stood out, conversations made to an unregistered number at strange hours, often lasting for more than 30 minutes. The number traced back to a rented flat in Rohtak, a quiet neighborhood far from Bhiwani. It was unusual for Manisha, a woman known for her discipline and straightforward life, to make repeated calls to an unknown person. The discovery raised a troubling question: who had she been contacting in secret, and what role did this mysterious connection play in her disappearance? The flat in Rohtak was the first breakthrough in weeks. A team was dispatched to search it, and what they found unsettled even the most hardened officers. The apartment appeared abandoned in haste. A suitcase lay half open, filled with women's clothes, though none of them matched what Manisha's family confirmed as her. Stains darkened the edge of the carpet, faint but unmistakable when tested. Blood. The true shock, however, came from a small wooden box, hidden beneath the bed. Inside was a diary bound in red leather, and scrawled inside were pages written in Manisha's own hand. Her entries painted a terrifying picture of her final days, revealing fears she had told no one. The diary spoke of discovery, how she had learned unsettling truths about Raghav Dutt. According to her writings, he was not the man the town believed him to be. Behind his polished smile and social influence, he was connected to dangerous dealings. Manisha had stumbled upon documents, hinting at money laundering, and worse, trafficking activities linked to his businesses. Her words were filled with dread, noting that she felt followed and watched. She wrote of Pooja too, expressing confusion over her friend's closeness to Raghav, and the uneasy sense of betrayal she could not explain. Her last entry was the most chilling of all. If something happens to me, it will not be a stranger. It will be those I thought I knew best. This discovery turned the case upside down. Until then, theories had leaned toward family feuds, inheritance issues, or the possibility of an abduction by unknown criminals. But the diary pointed directly to Raghav and those close to him. For Viren, it explained Raghav's strange calmness, his lack of genuine fear. If Manisha had uncovered secrets that could destroy him, silencing her would have been the only way to protect his empire. And if Pooja was mentioned, it suggested she might have been playing a far darker role than that of a worried friend. As the inspector dug deeper, the rented flat raised more troubling questions. Neighbors recalled seeing Manisha arrive there a few times, always alone, and always looking over her shoulder. They also mentioned a black SUV parked nearby on several occasions, the same type of vehicle earlier rumored near the school. The SUV was linked to a company owned by Raghav, further tightening the suspicion around him. Yet the biggest mystery remained unsolved. Why had Manisha been going to the flat at all? Was she hiding there voluntarily, trying to protect herself from Raghav's threats? Or had someone lured her there under false pretenses? Viren considered the possibility that Manisha had been preparing to expose Raghav. Perhaps the diary was not just for herself, but a record she intended to use as evidence. If so, she had underestimated how far those she trusted would go to stop her. Each clue only deepened the sense of betrayal at the heart of the case. Manisha had tried to protect herself, but the forces working against her were stronger, more ruthless, and closer than she imagined. The flat was sealed, the diary logged as crucial evidence, and the blood samples sent for analysis. But even without the final results, the investigation had entered a darker stage. The case was no longer about whether Manisha had disappeared by chance. It was clear she had uncovered a dangerous secret, one that left her with no safe place to turn. Inspector Kaul knew that following this trail would not only reveal what happened to Manisha, but would also expose powerful truths that many wanted buried forever. The haunting reality was settling in. She had not simply vanished, she had been silenced, and the people responsible were those closest to her. The trail of evidence had led Inspector Viren Kaul through a maze of lies, betrayals and shadows, but the final breakthrough came from technology. The CCTV cameras installed near the canal where Manisha's scooter was found had been reviewed countless times, but during a late-night session,
Viren noticed something previously overlooked. A black SUV drove past the canal around the exact time of Manisha's disappearance. Enhancing the footage revealed the registration number. It belonged to one of Raghav Dutt's companies. This was the missing link, the connection between suspicion and proof. Yet what shocked Viren most was not the car itself, but the person sitting in the passenger seat, barely visible in the grainy footage, was Pooja Rathore. The revelation shattered the fragile image of Pooja as a grieving friend. She had been there, present at the scene of Manisha's vanishing. The police immediately widened their investigation, and soon, bank records revealed secret transfers of money from Raghav's accounts to one belonging to Pooja. Their bond was not that of innocent friends. They were partners in something far more sinister. The inspector pieced the puzzle together. Pooja and Raghav had been entangled in a hidden relationship for months, one that Manisha had begun to suspect. When she uncovered Raghav's criminal activities and his betrayal, her knowledge became a threat to them. The wedding, instead of being a celebration, had turned into a countdown for Manisha's silence. Armed with this evidence, Viren led a raid on one of Raghav's warehouses outside Bhiwani. The location, masked as a logistics facility, revealed disturbing signs of illicit activity. Records, hidden ledgers and forged documents, all pointed toward smuggling and trafficking networks. Among the files was proof of shipments that linked Raghav directly to cross-border operations. Manisha's diary had not been a paranoid delusion. She had been right all along. Her discovery of these truths sealed her fate, and those she trusted most became her executioners. The search for Manisha's body continued relentlessly. Officers combed through fields, abandoned buildings, and the depths of the canal, but it was an anonymous tip that finally directed them to an old factory site. The place was desolate, its rusting machinery echoing the silence of forgotten years. Behind a crumbling wall, shallow earth had been disturbed. Digging revealed what everyone had feared: the body of Manisha Bhiwani, wrapped hurriedly in a sheet. Her life had been brutally cut short, buried in a place where no one was meant to find her. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town. The image of a beloved teacher, once a symbol of respect, now became a haunting reminder of betrayal and greed. The arrests of Raghav Dutt and Pooja Rathore followed swiftly. In interrogation, neither admitted guilt, each blaming the other, but the evidence was overwhelming. The car, the bank transfers, the diary, and finally the body, all pointed to their conspiracy. Arvind Bhiwani, though heavily suspected earlier, was cleared of involvement when further investigation showed his presence near the canal had been coincidental. He had truly returned to reconnect with family, but instead found himself entangled in suspicion. In the end, the real villains were those closest to Manisha, hiding behind masks of love and loyalty. For the people of Bhiwani, the case became more than just a crime story. It was a warning about how appearances could deceive, how wealth and charm could conceal rot beneath the surface. The town mourned the loss of a woman, whose only crime had been discovering the truth. Inspector Viren Kaul, though successful in solving the case, carried with him the weight of knowing how preventable it might have been. Manisha had tried to leave clues, to voice her fears, but those around her failed to act in time. As the trial began, media swarmed the courthouse, painting the Manisha Bhiwani case as one of the darkest crimes in recent memory. It was not just about a murdered bride-to-be, but about power, betrayal, and the dangers of silence. Even with Raghav and Pooja behind bars, the deeper networks they had been part of remained in the shadows untouched. The case closed officially, but the darkness it revealed lingered, leaving behind a chilling reminder: sometimes the people we trust the most are the very ones who bury the truth forever.